I'm Kimba. My last name is Aram. And I am a student of life. I don't see myself as fitting in any box, really, that I could define. And I feel like I'm a work in progress. But the theme of my life seems to revolve around being a messenger of frequency, understanding it and being a vessel, an instrument, like St. Francis said, make me an instrument of thy peace. And, that kind of says it all to me. My work has taken different forms over the years, and it keeps changing, actually. So it's like, it's not just one thing, but there's a thread there. And the thread is frequency and sound and coherence and harmony and helping, like a midwife. Like, I think there's many of us that are on the planet now that are here at this time to midwife a species going through a major transformation, a major frequency shift. And so a cosmic midwife soul wave that I came in, and it's not like I'm already perfected, I'm part of the process, but that's how I can have that level of compassion to be entrained to the collective, because I feel like the most important thing for our species right now is to evolve our consciousness by raising our frequency and coming into coherence. And that would solve all the problems we have. They're basically a result of disharmony. And so we have all the resources and information to make this heaven on earth, really, and to move into a whole new, beautiful world where everyone wins and everyone's provided for, and animals and plants and the environment is healthy. But what we lack is the coherence of consciousness to work together, to share, like our body when it's healthy, the symphony of our body, all the cells work together to create health. And they share resources, blood and nutrients and there's no borders. There might be a liver here and there's a heart here, but they don't see themselves as separate. They don't have like guards at the borders. It can be cancer and all the kinds of things. But in the model of, if we are a microcosm of Brahma, according to the ancient and other teachings, the universe is a unified being, and our whole planet's probably an atom in the cell of the body of Brahma or something like that. We're a fractal of a divine being. And I think bringing in the golden age is through coherence and harmony. And that's why I am here. And however I can be of assistance, I'm just going to follow spirit, really. And it can take different forms, but there's that single thread of frequency, intention, coherence. As a child, I've always been pretty sensitive, you could say. And music, I was introduced to music at about age 7. We got a piano, and I loved playing the piano. And I was taught, classical, and then I got into silver flute. I went to music school, and it was my personal healing retreat to play music. It wasn't something I liked to do with anyone around, which isn't, we'd go and play in recitals, and I didn't like that part. So I didn't really see music as, even though it was my love and it came naturally to me, and I didn't really want to pursue that as a life career, because the model I had was you get up and you perform. And for me, it was a meditation, it was medicine. And so fast forward to 1992, I'm about to graduate. I picked a topic of my life. I'm going to be a medical doctor, right? Because someone in the family has to follow in, the parental footsteps. And I had a near-death experience. And it was like totally starting over again. I was a baby. And so that's a whole big topic in itself. But the gist of it was I was given a life review and a life preview, and I saw I needed to change the direction of my life, and I was given the opportunity to do that. And the preview, I don't hear so much in near-death experiences. It was like, nope, not going there, and knowing that it's not my time to leave, which was the hardest part of it. It's like when you're there, you don't want to come back from that place. You do not want to come back. But it was very shortly after that the didgeridoo came into my life. And I had kept up piano just on the side as a personal medicine. But so music kind of has always been the thread. But then the didgeridoo came into my life, and it was like that sound connected me to the place I went in this near-death experience. It was like a ladder, like Jacob's ladder, the bridge to the higher worlds, that sound. And even though it's one note, I call it the monochord of the universe, because as I learned about Socrates' teaching and how that's how everything is structured, the monochord is the symbol of creation. It's a vibration infinitely divided into all the forms we see. And so I just started to follow that thread of music coming back into my life, spirit-driven. I felt like now it was thy will. Like I really didn't know what to do with my life. I thought I was going to be a medical doctor. I'm 21. I had it all planned out, and now I'm a baby again. So, but I have the didgeridoo, and it kind of became my guide. And I followed that sound, which led to the sound of creation and Nada Brahma, which is the latest chapter after almost 30 years of following that thread. I was drawn to music and medicine, but I didn't know how to weave them together because I didn't have a model for it in our culture. Music is always a performance. It's not like it was for the ancient people. It was for births and deaths, and we still use it for celebration, but it was to guide medicine journeys or to scare away dark spirits. Or music was always used in very sacred and many ceremonial ways. But in America, where I grew up, it was just for entertainment, and that didn't appeal to me at all. And so following this sound of the didgeridoo, and then other instruments started to come into my life. And I was drawn to the instruments that are more overtone based, that have a lot of harmonics, and more unusual instruments, 4-chamber flutes and the Waterphone. And these are just unusual. A lot of them are one of a kind, created by, wizards that just channeled that, instrument into being. And I realized that people are seeking to have that kind of comforting cushion of sound in a non-entertainment context. So I always encourage people to close their eyes, to lie down if they can, and to allow the sound to be a guide for their journey, and to allow the sound to harmonize them with themselves, with the cosmos, with their intention. So that's the context I generally use it now with groups of people. I was in my last semester. I was molecular biology and very left-brained, but top of my class, really academic. And but I had this deep nature-loving, and my parents, they're into Buddhism and shamanism and stuff, but not overtly, more like, open to all these things. But it wasn't like I had a spiritual practice or anything. There was a thread there. So I was walking to class one day. I was going to organic chemistry and having trouble getting there because every tree I passed by, I would be drawn to. I was going through this period right after the near death where I couldn't escape from trees. I would get sucked into them, and it was a phenomenon. It went on for a few weeks, and I was like, I would just fall into them. I'd hold them and just go into this thing, and I'm sure people thought I was a little strange. But so I couldn't, so I finally get to class, right? But I'm on my way, trying to get away from the trees that are pulling me in. And this lady's lying down on the mall there in the grass at the U of A, and she has some people that are doing hair wraps, and she has some instruments that I've never seen before. This was 92, so didgeridoos weren't really around back then. And they were made out of local agave that grows in Arizona by her boyfriend at the time, Alan Shockley. And I was just completely magnetically drawn to it. And so I said, play this. I just walked up to her, I'm like, you got to play this thing for me. I don't know what it was. And she played it, and I heard that sound. I was like, I need one now. It was that sound was my key back. And it is still that sound of the didgeridoo. And now I play the crystal, which I love. I designed a quartz crystal didgeridoo that you can really hear all the overtones in the harmonics. So it's like a monochord, but you can hear the subdivisions. It's kind of more my style, isn't so much the rhythm and the drone, but all the fine overtones that are within it, which I kind of see as like our body is the fundamental tone, the monochord, and within it are all the subtle bodies, and those are all overtones. So when you use instruments like Tibetan bowls or the Waterphone, which is played with a bow and it has water, and the harmonics off the water create all these sounds like whales in outer space or something, that instrument. Those kind of instruments I feel are really useful for guiding people in deep sound journeys, because they're somehow address these subtle layers. Like we have koshas, or there's different names for the subtle bodies that we have around the physical body, which is mostly what our culture pays attention to. But we have all these other bodies that are a little harder to access with medicine. You can use light, you can use flower essences, aromatherapy, but sound, I've found, often combined with those other subtle energy modalities, is really powerful. And that's where a lot of time the healing needs to happen. To me, the more recent terminology that's come into my mind is creating a standing wave of sound. And I can almost like, especially with the crystal, because it's so, uniform, and the quartz has this structure like the earth. The silicon is it holds information, but it's like slowed down light. And then you're combining sound with the light, and the crystal's vibrating. And I can almost see this standing wave, kind of like scalar maybe. It's like a higher dimensional frequency. And the Aboriginals say that the sound of the didgeridoo is what connects us to the dream time, which is where we go when we die, and where we can travel to in shamanic journeys, or we come from before we're born. The dream time is right there, but how do you get there? So I see it's a portal. The didgeridoo is like, can open portals to higher worlds. And that's what the near-death experience was for me. It was definitely my first experience since my birth that I could remember of entering the higher worlds. And so if we learn these techniques and tools to reconnect, you can do work there. And what I see doing that in a group, of course, it's not entertainment, it's entrainment, And so if I'm connecting through learning the pranayama technique, which is the ultimate pranayama is the circular breathing, and how it's stimulating all the centers in the Sushumna channel, and then you create the sound, and then my intention is just to be a vessel for the sound. Or if it's with a group, to create coherence in the group, because with sound, you want the intention to guide where it goes or what it does. It's like a tool. It's how you use it. So the didgeridoo is like this standing wave, and it's creating coherence. And I've been involved in some research with brainwave measuring with the feedback on the screen. And while I'm playing the didgeridoo, the gamma would go all the way to the top, which is over 40 hertz. It's like a high brainwave state, which I couldn't touch when I'm not playing the didgeridoo. It takes a lot of meditation, apparently, to generate that kind of state. And so I think it's creating very high frequency harmonics that your brain is in training to. And with the breath in your lungs, it's like this heart and head kind of coherence. And then that itself is kind of an expanded state, right? And so I see it as a tool, like in a group, like the Gaia sphere, we're creating a container for the collective coherence to happen. That's the intention. That's kind of what I see my dharma ended up being. Instead of being, some kind of role that's already paved out in our culture, I had to be guided to what it is. And I think everyone has to do this, like find your unique gift and express it. And mine happened to be not a conventional one. Like, I'm here to just be a messenger of a frequency. Mercury is my ruling planet, and so I feel very much as a messenger. It's not my sound, it's the sound of creation. And I now hear it all the time, starting in 2013, and that's what has always been my guiding light. Frequency has sound, music, but something about the didgeridoo is kind of like the anchor for me. And I like I play flutes and piano and other influences. They all have melodies, but the didgeridoo is so, like, you can really, there's no mind there. There's no story. Flute tells a story. Music has been used to tell stories and to entertain, uplift, and celebrate. But the didgeridoo is just like right to spirit, and that's kind of been my trajectory in this life, to learn how to build that bridge for myself to the higher world. So when it is my time to go, I want to be ready and know how to navigate, and I want to help others too, because it's something we all need to be prepared for when our transition time. But until then, we can still use it for coherence. And when we do a channeling event, it's really important for the group to be present, and of course the presenters to be in the moment, breathing in our hearts, in coherence, and then in coherence with each other, which is the community. This community, is the unification of ourselves and then with the group. And I really feel that that's also part of what the Age of Aquarius, which we're entering, that I'm here to be one of the many facilitators to practice what is it like to operate like a group mind. Like, I think we're going to be moving more into coherent states of collective consciousness, where we operate more like the rest of Gaia, the planet, does, as symbiotic, interconnected web of life that sees others as ourself, as each other, animals, plants, nature, each other. We are a unified web of life, not operating entirely that way right now. At least the human part isn't.
Right.
So this is part of the Age of Aquarius, is like we're moving into that. I think it's a higher dimension, maybe even a higher density, an ascension in a way, but it's like we're increasing our frequency, and the sound is a midwife, however, if we use it in that way, to be a more graceful process. I have been involved in different conferences over the years where I play before presenters. I have not done something like Gaiasphere, where it's a broadcast live globally. What was interesting about that is when I present before, I think some of these instruments, especially like the didge or the four-chamber flute, it's really great to just bring everybody into the moment. My intention is to just ground and cohere the group frequency. So then people are more, because we all come from like, our lives, and people flew in and drove in, and it's, whatever. We're all in these different frequencies, but the music can create a field of coherence that we all, so entrainment is the principle that is often talked about in sound therapy. It's like, when you hear a song and you just start to move, or even women who live together, menstruating together or whatever, we're entraining to frequencies around us, whether we hear them or we feel them. So entrainment is what is the basic principle of what sound is doing. So if I'm creating a field with intention to create coherence, then everyone in the room goes into coherence, just closing their eyes, breathing, becoming present. And I feel like that, we've done some research with Konstantin Korotkov, who developed the BioWell and the Sputnik, and measuring, the Sputnik measures the energy of space, the BioWell measures the biophotons of the energy field. That has shown that creating, with some research I've done with him, the sound actually lowers the entropy in the room and increases the frequency. But we know we don't need the science to tell us, but it is happening, and there is a science to it, but we can feel it. And so then when the presenters come, their message, especially with the channeling conference, but I think for any of the kind of presenters that come to Gaia are going to be of a similar frequency. Like, it's all about upliftment of consciousness, increasing the frequency of consciousness. The Gaia sphere is unique. I mean, Gaia in general is unique, but the Gaia sphere is, besides all the crystals that are everywhere, which are on the campus, and it's kind of like, I see it as like a temple. It's a modern temple, and we are the ancients reincarnating and trying to remember what we forgot through all the chaos of our history, and now we're waking up. We're entering the golden age. We're entering the age of Aquarius, and here's this very unique location. The whole campus, of course, Gaia Sphere is the public part of the campus, of the temple, the living temple. I mean, there's labyrinths here. We've got the Damanhur spirals. We've got, like, there's so much, and the crystals alone, these huge. There's nowhere probably in the world except gem shows that have the kind of array of carefully picked large-sized specimens that are energetically just so pure and powerful. And they're cleared regularly with sound because, they hold information and energy, and you want to make sure that it's only holding the program of New Earth and uplifting frequencies. I do feel like the importance of Gaia and Gaia Sphere is not only that, but as we are entering the new age, it's like a place to ground, there's a new grid. I kind of feel like and a lot of people are saying in different ways, there's a new pattern of how the earth is connected energetically. And of course, there were temple sites all over the planet that link those, but we also make temple sites by our gatherings, by what we do, by our intention, by ceremony, by crystals. So to do ceremonial work in a public context, in a globally broadcast context, that's very unique. And the kind of along the sound cymatics note, I was getting this image of the new grid. So like in cymatics, there's you'd have metal, plate, and sand, and you vibrate it and it makes these patterns, right? Geometric patterns. So we know, sound creates geometry and everything else, right? So, but when you increase the frequency, if you watch these videos, you'll see there's some kind of complex pattern. You start to slowly increase, hertz by hertz, the frequency. It goes into this chaos, no pattern. It kind of dissolves. And then all of a sudden, you keep going up in frequency. You start to see a new pattern emerge. And then boom, there's a new, more complex frequency because we're at a different, higher frequency. And I feel like we are in that phase transition right now as a species. And each one of us might be one of those pieces of sand going through what's changed. Everything's changing. Things are falling away. It's like dissolving. It's like chaos. But there's an order to the chaos. Like if you zoom out of a fractal, you can see, there's, so in time, we'll see there's a new pattern that's organizing itself. And I feel that this is one of those, maybe nodes in the pattern. Like they're all over there. I mean, the whole planet is everyone has their place in the new Earth. And it's possible there's different timelines right now that we have to anchor. This is what Dom and her work and others who talk about the choice point. Bashar talked about it and many others. And I feel that too. It's like not everyone may end up on the new Earth. Some people might, go to Earth that a lot of us wouldn't choose. And so using these kind of venues for anchoring these frequencies with coherence is part of the great work of the alchemy of our species right now. I discovered the Waterphone, 20 years ago. There was a man living on the Big Island. He's not alive anymore, but he developed this instrument he calls the Waterphone, and basically it's a metal drum that has water in it, and there's a hole in the center that you hold it that's hollow, where you put the water in. So the water is all along the bottom there. And there's these rods of different lengths. I'm not sure what the metal is, some kind of composite metal. And you play it with a bass bow with some rosin on it, so it vibrates the metal, and they're different lengths, so the different lengths metal create different harmonics when they're attached to the base, which is also metal, and the water inside is, so there's a little bit of hollow space, so it vibrates the water. So it creates these harmonics bouncing off the water. And then, so you when you bow it, it creates the vibration, it goes into the water, and then it bounces all around in there. So you never know what it's going to do. And it's just like, I call it Whales in Outer Space, because that's exactly what it sounds like. The first time I heard it, I hadn't heard of the Waterphone yet. I saw the Wrath of Khan when I was a kid, when it came out, I don't know, in the 80s, I don't remember. The very first scene, you know, you see the Klingons there, and dun dun dun, and then they dissolve, they disappear because they cloak themselves. And that was like right at the beginning of that movie. And when they do that, there's this sound you hear. And that was the Waterphone. And it's an outer space sound, you know. But so if you ever want to hear a cinematic version of that, just love overtones. I think that's why, and so when I play the Didge, and that's why I developed the crystal, because like you can really zoom in, tune to those overtones, those harmonics. All the harmonics do something to the brain that, and it's not as coherent in the same way as the standing wave of the didgeridoo, but I've noticed with myself, and when I play it for people who are in a really meditative lying down state, it just helps the brain to kind of like go cosmic. It opens up. I don't know scientifically what it's doing. It would be interesting to measure brain waves and all that stuff. I played a lot for medicine journeys of different medicines over 30 years now. First time I played the Waterphone in an ayahuasca journey was, I mean, that sound, I could see that it was opening different dimensional doorways acoustically. So I'm a very acoustic person. I hear sounds a lot more than I want to hear sometimes, because sometimes, you know, not above and below the hearing range. And so when in that state, and then you have this instrument that creates these acoustic portals, basically, other sounds come through. So I think that there's other things going on that we don't understand, but we feel them. So it's kind of like, I had a really left brain developed mind, you know, and when I got into music, I realized the importance of like whole brain, and even beyond the whole brain is the heart. You know, so that if we don't understand something with, like, our Western society is very left-brained and very mind-oriented, but there's so much intelligence in the heart. And I always thought it was interesting that the word ear is in the center of the word heart, and also earth. So it's like there's something about hearing that opens our heart, right? Especially certain frequencies and intentions. And there's so much intelligence there that, you know, as a culture, at least I can speak for the Western culture, because that's where I've spent most of my time. We need to remember how to use this feeling sense. Like, we might not understand something, but it's like, I don't know if it's intuition, which might also be, you know, these three centers combined. You know, there's a lot going on inside of us, but the intelligence isn't just here. And the science might not be correct. You know, and in the Sound of Creation series, I thought it was important to mention that, you know, we're such a visual culture. You know, I have to see it to believe it, right? That kind of thing. And these days, wow, with holograms and, you know, airbrushing, all this stuff, you know, it's so easy to deceive the eyes. So if you have a color that's a certain frequency, and you have a color that's one difference in the frequency, you will not be able to determine the difference. You can't visually tell. It would have to be pretty drastically different. But if you have two sounds, frequencies that are 1 hertz apart, you would hear it. You can hear that difference without even trying.
Is that yours? It's very nice.
Time for a pause. Well, some people don't think of themselves as musical, but when I hear people say that, or, that idea, it doesn't make sense to me, because we, just by existing, we are living music. Like our hearts beat, our breathing is a rhythm, our voice is in a certain frequency range, our brainwave patterns are a frequency. The new quantum physics is, of course, saying that everything is vibration and everything is in relation to each other. Interconnectedness is how the quantum world is structured, of vibrational patterns. That's how music is structured. It's vibration and relation. And so we are a musical being, just by, even if we never make a sound. But every time we talk, whether we sing or we think we're a singer, we are creating music. The thing is, how we define music and musicality is very limited bandwidth. And so it's like, okay, we can use the definition in a certain way. You can say, well, that's not music, it's noise. But so then you're like splitting hairs of definitions. But I think that we all can use the resources we have by living in a symphony of our body we are our own music therapists. We are our own vibrational beings of sound. And a technique that I've adopted since I met Richard Rudd, and of the Gene Keys and his Triple Flame app is, and I had thought about this for years, like I need to get some app that, gets me present, like a little ding. And he actually made this, and it's a wonderful tool. It goes off every 3 hours, but I think maybe even more often might be good, like once an hour. So when you hear this beautiful little sound, it could be just a chime, or you use that moment to just stop and take a breath and actually just listen. Like right now, you can hear the hum of the fans in the walls. We're in a pretty quiet room, but if you were, most places you hear traffic noise or birds. It's actually a form of yoga to tune into sound, whatever they are. It doesn't have to be mantras, doesn't have to be melodic. And if you want to go a step further, if you close your ears and you close your eyes and then you hum, or you can go om, but when your lips come together, it vibrates, you'll hear, and it might take some practice to hear this at first, but your bones in your head actually create a frequency that sounds like the sound of creation. It's not the same sound, but it's like a harmonic of it, because it's like more of the physical, but everything's harmonics. The whole universe is structured harmonically. And the sound of creation is the sound of space that is, we call whatever, the Big Bang, or there's many words in different cultures that is defining this sound, the unstruck chord. If you want to just tune yourself or attune yourself, if you can do all of this in 1 minute, if you did it once an hour, it actually can change your life. Just becoming more present. And then even if you start doing these practices, you start to do them at other times while you're washing dishes, while you're talking to someone, you start to become more present, because you're starting to break other patterns of just getting lost in thought while you're doing everything until you go to sleep and then go pass out unconscious, But to become present, not just when we're meditating, but when we're living our lives. This is just something I made up because I discovered, so I started to hear this sound in 2013, and that's the whole story. It sounds to me like the crystal didge, but maybe 40 octaves higher or more, which is, I discovered later, the sound of creation. And so that's what I tune into. And ideally, you listen to that all the time. Once you hear it, you use that as your umbilical cord to spirit. It's like listening to the didgeridoo 24/7. Ideally when you're sleeping too, but that's a work in progress. So, but if you don't hear it, and when you stop and you hear sounds in the room, that's good too. It gets you present. Listening is a great way to become, in your coherent field. But you can close your ears, close your eyes, and just take some belly breaths so you're breathing, something we all need to practice more, and hum or you can go Om. And then when you get to the part, you'll hear Om. The vibrates the bones in your head. And there is a harmonic to that vibration that you can start to practice hearing. It's just practice. That, like, you won't hear your voice so much of the you'll hear the bones vibrating. And what I found is that bone vibration is actually a harmonic. It sounds to me like a harmonic of the sound of creation, the Nada Brahma, which, like I said, I started hearing, and I've done some presentations. That's a whole huge topic in itself, which is the basis of almost every spiritual esoteric lineage talks about the sound of creation and how important it is, because we are emerging from sound constantly. We're actually not here all the time. We're phasing in and out of the higher worlds in here, and while we're having this human experience. But if you entrain your consciousness to these frequencies, that's why I think the Om in India and in yoga and all these traditions is, they call it the sound of Brahma, which is the sound of the creator, of which we are all a part, right? So in training yourself to that sound is coherence with the cosmos. It's basically a way to entrain yourself to the music of the spheres. We have free will, which is an interesting part of this earth school we're in. So my will versus thy will, basically, is how I see it. So we have free will. So we can choose to be in tune or out of tune. We're musical, but we can be out of tune, right? But we're still musical. And so the work is attuning ourselves and entraining ourselves to harmony, to beauty, to truth, to goodness, to the divine matrix. There's a fabric of reality that is like the flower of life. It's how space is structured. That's what Nassim's work is about. And that has a sound. I actually asked Nassim, do you think that, you're seeing the torus moving, and could that make a sound? Not a sound like we hear in 20 to 20,000 hertz spectrum, and if every black, hole of space is a torus, why couldn't sound be coming from the higher worlds into this world as a composite frequency? Do you know what I'm saying? That's what I think I'm hearing, that we can all learn to hear, that the Om is a harmonica of. That's why I love harmonics, and that's what Pythagoras and Socrates and all those ancient philosophers that were really into sound is like, understand, or even Hermes, that's where it all came from, right? The Hermetic lineage, as above, so below. It's like there's this basic blueprint of life, and it's structured musically and harmonically, and everything falls within it, and you can entrain your consciousness to map or reflect that harmony, and that's kind of the purpose of being here. That's the ultimate goal, and it's also, I think, ultimately how we return to the higher worlds.